Hello, we have made it to day 13, which means we are almost halfway through the semester. And in this um, lecture, we are going to learn how to use text, how to actually apply some notes um, and text to our drawings. The first thing that I want to do in order to do that is actually create a layer for it because I don't want it to be on any layer that is part of my drawing. So I'm going to go to Layer Properties and I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call this one just a simple text. Now, to be honest, I usually put in something like title or maybe notes, depending on what kind of text I want to be specifying for my drawing. I usually give them two different colors, but for this example, I'm just going to put in text. Okay. I think for one of your assignments, you actually put the name of the drawing that you're going to be working on. And I'm going to give it a color of blue for right now. I probably will change that as I go through here. I am going to make it current and get out of here. So now I am ready to actually create text. Um, sometimes people create text in their model space and sometimes they create it in their paper space. I tend to like it in paper space, but there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So I'm going to start off in paper space. So I'm actually going to go to my first layout, which is A1, which is this drawing of the bedroom. I am going to actually change this scale. Right now it's at 3/8. I'm going to actually change, oops, it's locked, so I do have to unlock it. But I'm going to change that scale to actually be a 1/4 inch because that is actually normally what you would show or display a floor plan um, in your drawings as. We almost always do it in 1/4 inch. For elevations, like interior elevations for the shower or something, that is normally done in 1/2 inch scale. So a 1/2 an inch equals a foot. So we're going to use a 1/4 inch and I'm going to bring actually, with my ortho off, these corners in a little bit. And I'm going to actually go to move and I'm just going to kind of move this off to the side so that I have some room to show you some of the text that I'm going to show you. In order to do text, we have to go to a different tab up here. So right now I'm on the Home tab, which we've been doing most of our stuff from, right? I'm going to go to Annotate. Annotate actually means to add text. Notice that you can add text or notes. Notice you also can do your dimensions here, leaders. And the first thing I want to actually do is create a style. Over here on the text on the left, it's showing that my style right now is standard. The way to create a new text style is to actually go to this little itty bitty arrow to the right of text. Notice when I hover there, it does say text style. So I'm going to click that and it'll bring up this box. This box shows me that the two basic text styles that come with AutoCAD, one is annotative, and we're going to learn about that, and the other one is standard. I will say that some people just stick with standard, but most companies will create their own drafting standards within their company or organization. So they will actually specify what text styles they want you to use in the drawings. Standard is Arial. If I want to create a new text style, I will go to where it says new over here. And it will use whatever is highlighted on the left as kind of like the default to start from. So it's starting from the standard text style. If I wanted to create one annotative, which like I said, I'll talk about, I would probably make sure that's highlighted. The first thing it's going to ask is for a name. So that can depend on if you want to give it a name like maybe based on the client. Maybe they want a specific text style, or maybe the kind of drawing you're doing. I'm just going to call this one Roman. And the reason I'm calling it Roman is basically I'm just going to give it a font of Roman. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And then this is now highlighted, so I know that I am now editing this version, not the standard anymore. I'm going to go to where it says font name and click, and it's kind of like Word, where you have to go and select your font. So I'm going to go down alphabetical order to Romans, which should be right here, romans.shx. If it was a different kind of font, this might be available to select, or even if I wanted to use a big font, I could click it here. I almost never change those options. This is where if I wanted it to be annotative, I would click height. Sometimes you might want to actually select the height that you want your text to be, and sometimes you wouldn't. If I leave it at 0, that means that I can actually tell it each time I want to create it what height I want to use. So there's kind of benefits to keeping it at 0, but like I said, you can specify exactly what you want that height to be. And in your calculator example, you will change this. Then over here, I have some effects that I hardly ever use. One, upside down. Notice in the preview, why would you want your text to be upside down, right? But there could be cases for that. Backwards, I don't know, maybe you're creating a mirror type of image, so you'd want it to be backwards. Never use that. Vertical, that could be interesting, maybe in a title block or something. I hardly ever use that as well. And I almost never change the width factor, but notice right now over here it's at 1. If I change that to 2, it just creates a double the width of each of those letters. I am going to switch that back to 1. And then the oblique angle, there are companies that actually want you to use an oblique angle. So I think the standard is 25 if they want an oblique angle, or maybe as much as 30. But that is where you would set that. I am not going to give it an oblique angle, so I'm going to switch that back. And then once I'm all done with setting up the format of that, I'm going to say apply. And then I can also say set current, so I don't have to actually select it later. So I'm going to hit close. Notice this is where it is now displayed. It's saying that it is the Roman text style. If I did want to change it, I could go just by clicking and select one of the other ones I have. You might have a long list eventually of several different text styles. So that would be where you would change it. And then right here is where it's actually saying the text height that can be adjusted. So to start text, there are actually 2 different kinds of text. If I click here, notice I have multi-line text, but I also have single line text. So I'm going to show you first the single line text. And single line text is just what it says. It's a single line. So you can't create multiple lines. It kind of makes sense, right? Because multi-line would mean multiple lines. So once I start that command, notice it says specify start point. But notice some options down here at the bottom. Okay. One is style. If I didn't already have Roman selected, I could hit S and enter and change the style. Okay, so if you forgot, this is your second chance to do that. Another one is justify. And I'm just going to type J and enter just so you can see all the different justifications. It says them down here, but it also brings up this little box, if you have your quick properties on, of left, center, right. I'm going to show you align and fit later because those are kind of unique. These other ones just basically stand for top left, top center, top right, middle left, middle center, middle right. Okay, so you kind of get the gist of those. And you can play around with those if you want. The default is left. So if you don't select any other justification, it will do left. This is one of the only two places that you can set the justification within the single line. In multi-line, they give you another place to select it. But so I'm going to select left. That would be the default if I didn't change anything. And I'm back to where it's asking for the start point. So I'm going to kind of zoom in here, and I'm going to say that I want my start point to be here. Notice the very next thing it asks is the height. So if I actually set the height in the text style, it wouldn't even ask this. It would just skip right over this and go to the next step. But because I said 0, it's giving me the option of saying, okay, what do you want your height to be? Let's say that I want it to be, and notice I do have 3/16. That's the standard that I use for titles. And the standard that I use for notes is 3/32 of an inch. That may sound kind of strange, but that's the standard that I've used, oh my goodness, let's just say years. But let's say that you want to use an eighth of an inch. Okay, so I would type that in, and then before you can start typing, it will ask you this one more question. Some people forget this, and then it messes up, and they're like, why didn't it work? Okay, it's going to ask for the rotation angle. 0 is the default, which means it's just going to start typing regularly. If I put in 90, then the text would actually go at a 90 degrees up this way. I am going to keep it at 0 for right now. And once I hit that, then it is now ready for me to actually start typing in my text. So I've got through all the parameters and I'm ready to actually start typing. So let's say that I want to say, let's do it in all caps, that this is a bedroom. Okay, that's the title. I type that and it's pretty straightforward, right? If I hit enter, it will go to the next line. So even though it's a single line text, it will allow me to hit enter. And let's say I can say, oh, next line. Okay, just as an example. If I hit enter twice, enter, enter, it will actually exit out of single line text. But notice if I click this, that is one line. And then if I click this one, that's another line. So they're two separate texts. I could actually go to move and move this text to be, I don't know, over here. Okay, they are separate. They're not connected in any way. So that is one of the parameters you need to keep in mind. And you also need to keep in mind that if you're in single line text, let me show another example. So if I type in, and you have to go through the steps. So the height, yes, 1/8, rotation 0, hit enter. Maybe this is actually the game room. Okay, but notice another thing you can do. When I get to the end, I can hit enter, or I can just type or click, sorry, where I want maybe the next line to be without having to use move. So I could say, oh, you know what? This is my closet. Okay. And then I could click over here and maybe type something else, or click over here and type something else. So that's kind of a cool feature, is you could keep going with just a single line of text each time, or I could hit enter again and I'm out of it. Okay. Some features with single line text. Notice I didn't have any like special features for this. Multi-line text actually gives you some right on the ribbon, which I'll show you in just a minute. But let's say I wanted this to actually be underlined. I'm going to go to single line text, start it again. I'll start it kind of similar to where the other one is. I'll just start right here. I do need to go through the parameters, so 1/8 of an inch, rotation 0. But if I want to actually have bedroom underlined, this is where some parameters have to be set right now. I call these the percent options. So I would actually type in percent and U. Once I hit U, it goes back to the beginning. It's like, okay, I know what you want me to do. You want me to underline it. So percent %U is underline. And then I can actually, whoops, I was in capital, type in bedroom, and it's underlined. Now, if I wanted to keep going and not continue to underline something, I would actually have to go percent %U again to stop it. And then I could actually continue with maybe something else, like, I don't know, more parameters that I wouldn't want to be underlined. I'm going to just kind of go back because I don't need those. So that would be a way to underline it. All the different options with percent are actually on page 288 in your book. There's not that many. You can do percent D for degrees, percent P for plus minus. I guess I could show you some examples of that. So if I wanted to change this to actually say 72 degrees, I could do 72 and then go percent D, and it will add that little degree symbol right there at the edge. So you could do those symbols. It doesn't have a lot of options, just a few. You can also put a line over something, just another option. So that is some parameters for single line text. Now let's say that I wanted my text maybe to fit exactly on the bed. Kind of strange. I don't use this option a lot. But with single line text, I go to that again. One of the justifications is, and I'm going to actually select justify here. One of the ones that I can select is the fit. So if I go down to fit, it's going to ask me for the first endpoint of the line. Basically, the text is what it's asking for. Looks like I have my O-snap off, so I'm going to turn that back on. But let's say I want it to fit between this point and this point. I'm going to select this one first. It's asking for the second one, so I'm going to select this one. And then it's asking for the height, just like it would before. So I'm going to say, yes, I want it to be 1/8 of an inch. And now it's not asking me for the rotation because it knows I want to fit it between those 2 points. So let's say, well, I can type in the same thing, bedroom, and notice what it does as I start typing. It is purposely fitting it between those 2 points and changing the width. So if I keep going with typing like this, it will keep changing the width of it the more I try to type. It's not a great feature, but it will keep the height the same. So the height is the same as this, but it's just squishing all my letters together in order to fit it on that bed. Okay. Another option that you can actually do is, well, let's go to that to actually show you. Single line and go to justify is the align. So with this one, let's do, it's asking for another point. So let's say the middle of the bed, and then the other point, I'm going to do the middle of this side of the bed. This one, notice it purposely skipped the height, and it's blinking pretty big for the height. So with a line, it's not going to actually keep the same height. So I'm going to start typing the room, bedroom, and notice it is the height of the width that you just assigned. So because I went from here to here, it gave a height of the same distance. But as soon as I start typing, it gets smaller. So it's going to align it between there. I hit enter twice. It's a line between here, but it's it's changing the height. So it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. It won't change the width according to what I actually type. So I'm going to double click this. See if it'll let me, let me go to the end. So if I keep typing, see how the height just continues to get smaller, but they're going to fit the text within that. So it's aligned with it, but the height will change. So we'll just go back because it'll be kind of similar to the other one. I just clicked out of that to get out of the editing. And before I go any further, that is the easiest way to edit something with your text, is to just double click it. So once you double click it, it will highlight it, and then I can actually change the text just by typing. And once I hit enter, it will get out of the editing. Now notice it is allowing me to keep editing. So it says select text. So once I hit enter, I can select a different text and I can change this one to be whatever I want it to actually say here. Um, and let me just say, I'm going to actually erase this and this and this and this, because this is what I normally do when I'm doing my drawings, is I will create the text that I want, the height, if I want it underlined, the format, the style, everything. And I find it easier to just go to copy, select my text, and then actually put it in the other rooms that maybe I want it to be. And I'm purposely pushing this one over to the side for a reason. And then what I will do is I will just double click and I will just change the word. So it's still going to be underlined, but I'm going to change it to now say closet. I'm going to click out and click this one. And I'm going to type bath and click out. It's still allowing me to select another one, but I'm not going to keep going. I'm just going to hit enter again. And it's an easier way that I find to create the same kind of text all over your drawings. So you can do it once and then copy, especially if you have a lot of rooms. It's such a helpful thing. Another thing within the design world is a lot of things need to actually be aligned. So I'm going to go back to the annotate tab. But like closet and bath, notice how they're not quite aligned vertically. If I drew a line straight up from bath, it's not exactly aligned with the word closet. That is one thing that the design industry loves, is for things to be aligned. So even with titles in rooms, hint hint for an assignment coming up, it's good if they can be aligned. Now you don't want this one to be maybe aligned with closet, because then it would be in the middle of the bed. And actually, I really wouldn't want these words right here. Or maybe over here where it might be conflicting with the table. But these two could easily be aligned. So there's a wonderful little feature. Ooh, before I do that, I'm going to change the spelling of this to be purposely wrong. I'll show you in just a second why. But there's this wonderful button right here, and it is text align. When I select that, I have two different options. One is, okay, I just selected it. It says select text objects to align, which basically means, do you have a text already that you want the rest of your text to align to? Well, let's say, yeah, I want bath to be aligned with this weird spelling of closet. So select the ones you actually want to change. Okay, I have to remember it that way. So the ones I want to change is I want to change bath to be aligned with this one. So I'm going to select bath. Now what's cool is if I had a bunch of different texts, I could keep selecting, which is nice, because if I had a bunch of rooms all lined up, I could keep selecting them. And then I would hit enter. And then it says select the objects I want to align to. And it does have to be a text. So I'm going to select this one, and it went to the left justification of that. And yes, it depends on where I select the next point. So if I want it to be vertically aligned, be a good thing to turn ortho on and just click somewhere along this line, and it will move the word bath to align with closet, or whatever that word is. So let's fix this word. Now, yes, I could double click and I could actually fix it. A word that some people do not spell correctly is dining. So dining room. So the way to actually check your spelling is this wonderful little button up here called check spelling. When I click that, it will bring up this wonderful box. It defaults to checking your entire drawing. So I could actually do that, or I could select this one and it basically will allow me to select any text I want just to check the spelling of it. But let's just check the entire drawing. When I hit start, it immediately finds that weird word. So this word is not in the dictionary. And this word is the closest suggestion. That isn't the word closet. So I would actually have to go down, and it doesn't even have the word. Oh, there it is. I skipped right over it. There's the word closet. So it tried. It said closest, okay? But the word closet is here. Now, if you could not find your word, you can type in the word that you actually want right here where it says suggestions, and it will allow you to do it that way. But I did select closet, and then all I have to do is hit change. Notice you can ignore. So if that was maybe a weird word that they wanted to use, you could say ignore. You could say add to dictionary. You could say ignore all of them if it's repeated throughout your drawing, or you can go down here and set change. Now it does give a little notification that it's complete, and you just hit OK and then close. So it does bring me back, and it did change the word closet. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these two because I really don't need them. And now I'm going to actually, oh, before I do that, one more little button that's wonderful over here. If I wanted to change the justification of this, maybe I wanted to make sure that every time I did a title, it was middle justified instead of left. So I could put the word in the middle of the room, maybe, and then it's always justified in the middle of the room. So I'm going to actually, before I do that, I'm going to move bedroom to be more in the middle of the room. Now I could line it up exactly with the midpoint, but just as in this example, see how it's more aligned to the middle of that bed? So going back to annotate, this wonderful button right here is to justify, and if you just kind of hover there, justify with actually not moving your text. So sometimes if you change the justification like in the editing portion of it, it would actually move it. But this way, I can click this and it'll ask me which ones do you want to change the justification for. Well, let's say I want this one, and maybe even this one, and maybe even this one to all be a different justification. So I click those, I hit enter, and it says, okay, which justification would you like? Well, let's pick center. It didn't move this, okay? But when I click, this blue grip now says, okay, there is the center of your justification. So if I double click this and maybe change this title to say master bedroom, notice it's still, I'm going to hit enter, it's still centered right there on the bed. So that's the easiest way to change your justification so it doesn't move it, because otherwise, if you did it through editing or through properties, it would actually move the text to move the left to the center, which probably isn't what you want to do. Okay, so let's go into the other way that you can do text. And I think most people prefer the other way, although I admit I love the single line for if I'm going to label like a refrigerator. You're just going to call it a fridge. It's a single line. You don't need multiple lines. But let's say I wanted master bedroom to maybe say master and then go underneath and say bedroom. Or I'd have a long list of notes maybe over here. I would actually go to multi-line text. So once I click that, it is going to ask me for the first corner. So the way this works is it wants to create a box to fit all your text in. And it wouldn't actually, make it fit in the box, but it's kind of like a starting point. So let's say I want to put some text over here on the side. I'm going to click with my left mouse the first point. Now, the default is to click the second point. But before I do that, notice all these options down here. I can say the height, I can say the justification, the line spacing, rotation, style, width, columns, okay? And that's all wonderful, but it's also on the ribbon, okay? So I can do it here or I can change it on the ribbon. Now there are some problems with this ribbon is going to change, by the way, with changing it on the ribbon. So sometimes it's easier to just do it here. But for this example, I won't do anything yet. I'll just click the other corner of the box. So if I made the box really small, it would try to fit the text in that box. But I'm going to make it pretty big. So I'm going to click here. Once I do that, that is when this entire ribbon changes. And to be honest, it's a lot like Word. Okay, maybe not as, intelligent like Word, but there's a lot of features up here. And now it's basically clicking ready or, pulsing or whatever, ready for the text to be put in. One thing that I like to keep on, and notice it's on because it's blue, is the spell check. So that is outlined in blue. It'll just basically underline anything that's not spelled right, kind of like in Word. And I like to keep a ruler on just to keep track of, where my text is. But you can easily, turn the ruler off if that kind of annoys you or whatever. And if you don't want it to tell you, that maybe you need to check some spelling, okay, I would never turn that off. Um, and actually, I can keep the ruler off for now. But notice over here, it does have a height. What's funny about the height is if I click here and even click the down arrow, I get kind of what I've been working with already. So it's changing it according to where I'm hovering on. Change it later. So it's not like oh my goodness, it's going to be stuck at that height. Okay, so there's the height. There's that annotative again. I'll show you that later. But here's all those other options. So if I wanted it underlined, I could select that. It will turn blue. Okay, and then I can just start typing. Whoops, let's change it to not be all caps. This is underlined. Okay, then I go to the next line, and let's say I don't want it to continue underline. I just click it off. It's basically a lot like Word. Okay, so I don't need to go into maybe everything here. Maybe example of a list. Okay, I hit enter. It's going to keep going down as long as I hit enter in basically a paragraph form. But if I wanted to do a list, I would go to the bullets, kind of like in Word, and say, okay, I do want it to be bulleted. Bulleted? Is that a word? I don't know. Okay, so then I could say, my first bullet is this, keep hitting enter. Whoops. Second bullet. Okay, you kind of get the hint, right? If I go to the next line and I don't want to continue the bullets, I just go to bullet and numbering and hit off. And it'll basically just go back to the beginning, kind of like in Word. I don't need to say that anymore, do I? You do have other options, like symbol. This one is wonderful. Let's see, example of a symbol. Oops, symbol. So if I do that and then go to symbol, look at all the symbols you can actually pick from. So I could pick the diameter symbol. I could pick, oh, I don't know, maybe the center line This one I use a lot in my drawings to show that, yes, that is a center line. I'm going to hit enter. Maybe you have to identify the property line of a project. So the PL, you do have the degrees. Okay, maybe you'd want to actually put like 72 first or something. But you could put the degrees in. Whoops, hit the wrong thing. So it will automatically put it in. So it is a lot easier than the single line text for that, is the symbols are right there. But it also has some other features. One is, let's say I need to put in that this is a 1/2 inch. So I do 1 and slash and 2, and it's doing everything it should. But as soon as I put in the inch symbol, look what happens. It stacks it horizontally, basically with a horizontal line in the middle. But it has this little lightning bolt underneath. So if I click the lightning bolt, it does say it's horizontal. I could change it to diagonal just by clicking there. Okay, I'm going to change it back for now. But look what else is also here. Stack properties. Oh, and I could unstack it. I could leave it the way it was. But stack properties actually shows me what I was doing. So 1/2, it says it's horizontal. I can pick fraction or tolerance or decimal. You probably would never use the tolerance or decimal. Those are for mechanical things. Um, the center position, the size. But over here, it has auto stack, kind of like the explanation that of what you could actually change. So it's saying that if I do a x over y, it will be a horizontal fraction. But notice if I clicked this one, it would be x with a diagonal over y by doing x over y. But look at also what's here. X with the number sign y becomes the diagonal fraction. So I have two options here. I could either say, you know what, I always want the diagonal fraction to be when I do with a slash, or let's say sometimes I want the horizontal, but sometimes I want the diagonal. If I just keep it the way it is, like this, and hit close, I'm just going to type in another example. This is basically the horizontal, or diagonal. Wow, having trouble typing. If I do 1 and then the number sign and then 2, it won't do anything until I hit inch. But notice it did change it to that diagonal versus the horizontal. So you can either, tell it what you want, or you can just type it differently, depending on what you want. So that's the fractions. But let's go down to maybe a field. So if I want to actually create a field of a date, and actually put that, there is this wonderful thing up here called field. And when I click that, it actually brings up all the different fields, or what they would call intelligent text, that I can use. Now, if it has dots or dashes up here, it basically means you can't use that one. Okay, you don't have the data in your system to create that. But notice if I go down to date, it's right here on the list. They are in alphabetical. I have all these different formats of showing the date. So I could do it this way, which is the one highlighted right now. I could actually put in the entire date with Monday and all that. I could put in the time as a, what do they call that? Military time. I could put in the date and the time, okay, which, okay, it happens to be 6:08 p.m. Or I could pick any of these versions that I want, including the European way, which is how they do it there. So you can pick whichever you want for your project. Now, you do have an assignment where you have to do that. So make sure that you select the right version that you would actually want. So let's say I select this one and then I hit OK. Notice it puts in the date. It is the 5th of 10th. Ooh, see, that's the European way. So maybe I didn't want the European way. I could actually do a backspace and change the field to be the correct way, which for us would actually be 10/5, September 5th. And then I could hit OK. It does highlight it in gray so that you know it's a field. Otherwise, you would just think, oh, it's just regular text, right? So I like that little feature of a field that you can actually see that it is one. I could actually put in maybe the file size. That is an option. So I'm going to go up to field. And if I keep scrolling down, it will tell me the size of my file right now. Notice some of the others you could put in, like your file name, if you needed to remember where it was on your computer, maybe your login. I'm the owner, so it's going to say basically it was on your computer. But I selected the file size, I hit OK, and then that becomes a field in your drawing. Wanted to show you with that, except for this one thing right here, which is a mask. So let's see what that would do right in the middle. If I hit mask over here on the left, it's like a background. It may not say this right now. Probably on yours it'll say red, and probably this is unchecked. So if I actually check that, it's going to say what kind of border offset do I want, basically for your text from the color. And then I would actually want to select the color that I want and hit OK. So it will mask your entire text. So you kind of have to be careful with this. If you wanted only a portion of it masked, then you would actually um, I'd actually have to go back in here and take that off. So I would actually have to hit enter, and notice the more I hit enter, the more it actually goes down. So I forgot I was in multi-line. So for multi-line, to get out of this is two different ways. I can either go to this check and say close text editor, or I can click anywhere outside of it. So just clicking outside of that will actually have me exit this entire thing. If I wanted to now create maybe a mask of text, I would have to start my multi-line text again, or I could copy this and then create another box for my text and say, okay, this one, well, I could do it before or after. Let's do it before. If I go to mask, like I just showed you, and say I want a background mask, I do want it to be yellow, so I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to just say this is using the mask. Well, let's capitalize that. And then I could keep going. Just whatever I'm going to type is going to be within a yellow mask. And like I said, you can stop your multi-line text by clicking outside or clicking the check. And now this is going to have a background color of yellow. I don't do that very often unless I want to draw attention to something, maybe something that changed within a drawing or whatever. So this is doing it within paper space. Let me go back to model space real quickly. Notice I have no text. It is all on the paper. So there is no text on the actual drawing. It's on the piece of paper. So going back to model space, it's perfectly clear. There is no text. So there are several ways to do it. One is to be annotative. And like I said, I'm not showing that until later. Another way is to kind of have to do a little bit of multiplication. So I'm going to actually change the color of my text to be yellow. Otherwise, you will not see it because blue doesn't show up very well on the black background. And then let's just create some text again. What do I want to show you? Well, if I wanted to actually put maybe a single line text of the title of the room, I'm going to go to single line, and it's asking me for the first point. So if I click here and it's saying, oh, I'm still in the justification of fit. So I'm going to escape and I'm going to start that over again. Go to single line, and I'm going to actually go to justify, and I'm going to say, no, I want this to be left because I think I was either in a line or fit. So I'm going to start my text right here, and it's asking for the text type. Okay, let's say I do want it to be 1/8 of an inch. If I hit enter and I hit, enter again for the rotation angle of 0, it's going to, start pulsing at me, and I actually type in bedroom. Well, let's do it in all caps. Not that it's going to matter because you're not going to be able to see it. But once I hit enter and enter again, look how small it got. Remember I said the text height of 1/8 of an inch? This is 1/8 of an inch within the bedroom. Remember the bedroom is, well, let's see. If I actually went to the home tab and went to the quick measure, the bedroom is 15 feet 5 by 18 foot 6. So 1/8 of an inch is very small. So that's why I say you have to do some multiplication. Okay, so that's if I said 1/8 of an inch. You can't read it. But let's go and try that again. Going to annotate and single line text. And I'm going to say my start point is here this time. So for my height, this is where you have to do some math. Okay. And I'm going to get out of this to show you how you could do math right on your computer. So another feature that AutoCAD has is this cute little calculator over here. So if I click that, it will actually bring up a calculator on my screen. Let's move it so you guys can see it a little bit better. And I can do my calculations right here. So the way to figure out the height, if I really want it to be 1/8 of an inch high within this bedroom and not being annotative, because that would be a different way of doing it, is to do a scale factor, which, okay, remember how I wanted this drawing to be 1/4 inch equals a foot, because that's how usually floor plans are done. I take the reciprocal of that. So 1/4, taking the flip or reciprocal of that would be 4. Okay, so that's my scale factor. Okay, actually the scale factor is to say times 12. So my scale factor, yeah, I know, you can figure that in your head, is what, 48, right? So you have to do the scale factor first, which is the reciprocal of the scale you want your drawing to be, times 12. That's just the standard. And then you actually multiply what your height of your text is going to be. So I'm going to multiply of 1/8 because I want my text to be 1/8 of an inch. A lot of math, isn't it? I've kind of gotten in the habit of not even doing that. I've used this so much that I know what number it's going to be before I do it. The number is 6. So for an 1/8 inch scale, no, I'm sorry, an 1/8 inch high text height, you would actually have to give it a height of 6 inches. Okay, so now you know that. So when I go back to annotate and go to single line text, and I do my start point, about right here. When it asks for the height, which is what it's asking for right now, I'm going to say 6 and enter. Crazy, right? Okay, rotation angle 0. So I'm going to hit enter again. And then it's going to start asking, okay, what do you want it to say? And I want it to say bedroom. Oh, but I want it underlined. So I'm actually going to go %% and then type bedroom. And then I'm going to hit enter twice, and voila. That is an 1/8 inch text for this scale drawing. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this one. By the way, this is something that's kind of standard in drawings, is you get rid of the junk. Okay, so if I created a line and then I created another line over it, like say I had a wall line here and then I did a wall line over it, you would want to get rid of the extra lines or maybe the extra little things you accidentally did around your drawing. So you'd want to actually, delete that or erase it. But going back to my layout, and I will have to kind of change that color again. So I'm going to go to my layer properties so you can see it and change this back to blue so it'll be readable. Notice that is the same height as this. Okay. So even though they were created two different ways, they still create the same thing. Pros and cons. If I'm in model space, and I actually want to move all of this, maybe to the right or something, notice the text moves with it. So when I go back to my layout, these texts moved with it, whereas this one did not. Okay, so it depends on, kind of what you want to do. If you don't want to move something, um, then you don't have to worry about it, because it wouldn't be something you'd have to move on your own. But since this one was created in paper space, it didn't move. But this one was in model space, so it moved when I moved the actual drawing. So kind of some pros and cons. The con is when you use annotative text. Then it gets a little bit more complicated on some other features, but we'll talk about that later. So that actually covers what you need to know for the beginning of text. Extra credit on the calculator, if you happen to still be with me, is you will actually open up your calculator assignment and there is a blank screen on the calculator. Okay, so this is your exercise that you're going to be doing, and you're going to be putting a lot of text on these keys. But notice this blank screen up here. So extra credit would be if you actually used um, both. Let's put some parameters. If you use the either fit or align justification text and put up there the word calculator. So you actually have the word calculator written on this screen up here using either align or fit justification, single line text, because the entire assignment is single line text. And you also put in 72 degrees. So I showed you how to do both of those options. So that would give you some extra credit. Yeah, I don't know, just in case you may need it. If you don't, then don't worry about it. But I like to give extra credit. I think it's kind of fun. So that is text to begin with. And don't forget your midterm. Have some more fun with AutoCAD.